And we're live.
Live and happening.
This is I'm saying this like you're a fucking object, but, well, here is someone who I actually have not had on the channel before. Andrew K. You may know him better as Angry Aussie, or maybe you don't. I don't fucking know what you watch on YouTube, but
Yeah, I guess at least some people may have heard of been doing this silly crap for long enough that a few people have come across me from time to time.
oh, I think that you had been. I think you had already been around for a long time by the time I found your channel.
I
That
think
was
my YouTube
only
channel's a teenager.
you and me both. Although I think I found your channel before my channel ever was a thing.
Okay.
I think I mean like a year before I had been watching like a lot of stuff on YouTube. I was a teenager. I think I was like 16, but I remember your videos about all these different groups of misogynists and how they just need to shut the fuck up.
That's the videos I make when I'm just sick of people and I'm not going to engage or have discourse. I'm just like, no, it's time for you to shut the fuck up.
I mean, that's pretty accurate, and I definitely was failing it at the time. I
Mm.
was one of the few teenagers that wasn't. I mean, I guess I was still somewhat of a shitlord back then, but I was coming around on a lot of things around that point.
I think everyone goes through that phase, particularly as a teenager. Your big thing is, oh, how can I upset the normies? And that's why I try not to be too harsh on, when someone tries to whip up a frenzy, like, oh my God, look at what these school kids are doing. It's so fucking horrible. And I go, well, they are school kids. Maybe cut them a little bit of slack. Maybe they're awful. Maybe they'll grow out of it.
Well, I mean, you can also tell. You can tell to some extent, like what stuff that they grow out of and what stuff that they've been like brainwashed with. Like when you have a kid who comes in and tries to float some Holocaust denial, that they probably didn't come up with that one completely on their own.
Yeah, that is the other thing when young people start spouting extremist ideas. You're absolutely right. It's very doubtful that they just sat down and thought through stuff and go, you know what? I think the truth is probably no, they've been suckered into some propaganda source and they feel like they're smart by going against the mainstream, and that's a common thing because I mean, whether if you're into punk rock or whatnot, it's going, yeah, fuck the man. But when it mutates into this weird, like, yeah, my anti-establishment thing is being really awful.
Well, also, what the fuck is more establishment than like a genocide? I would really like to know this
Yeah,
because
that's
I
not
don't
really a
know.
fringe activity.
Yeah, I don't know if any of them are aware of this, but like pretty much every modern like superpower, or actually, yeah, every modern what we call the superpowers as far as nations go,
Yeah.
all of them have committed genocides. I mean, do
Oh,
you think that a
absolutely.
bunch of white do you think that a bunch of white people have always lived in the Americas? I mean, I swear some people think they do or think that's the case, but
Well, it is, yeah. Some people really do have that level of delusion. You're right, and I mean, there's genocide and genocide. There's the Nazis literally rounding people up and murdering them, and there's various empires who have starved out populations. They've, in order to engage in conquest and resource gathering, they've basically caused famines. And so, yeah, the genocides aren't always line people up and shoot them or, gas them. Sometimes it's use your economic power to ensure that a population all but dies out.
Oh yeah, and then of course you have some fascists who would like to stretch out that definition to suit their purposes, where they'll start to include consensual sex that's between two people of different races, which I mean,
White genocide! White genocide! It's just like that. Yeah, that's
oh,
super weird.
oh, I can't wait till they hear that I've never planned to have kids. Am I
Well, yeah,
still
that's
committing
one of the
white
problems too.
genocide?
Yeah, no, they say if white people don't have children with other white people, then that's part of the whole problem. I mean, and the really frothing at the mouth ones keep shrieking white genocide, but the ones who are trying to be a little bit more subtle, although they're not really very subtle, they talk about the great
The great
replacement.
replacement. Yep. I can tell we've both come across that conspiracy theory more than once. Oh my god,
It's
fucking right wing circles are teeming with that bullshit.
yeah, they're so obsessed with being the victim. It's just like you try to say, no, just objectively look at reality and see in almost every sphere around the world, uh, white people have all advantages in their favor and none, or when you have some disadvantage when you are white, it's not because intrinsically you are right. It's something else in the system that hasn't worked in your favor. But white people are almost exclusive in that they're not discriminated against because they're white. And so, yeah, this crowd are so obsessed with saying, "Oh no, we're victims too," and we're victims of the great replacement. It's quite surreal.
The funny thing about the great replacement is that there's no actual logic either in like how they view race passing on in genes because they'll see so I don't see how you can see like interracial unions in that manner that may produce kids. I don't know how you can look at something like that and say, "Oh, the whiteness it's recessive," but if they have a black parent, what does that mean that the black person's not a victim of genocide themselves? It, is it just whiteness that's recessive and not blackness? Because I think
Yeah,
whiteness doesn't actually exist.
yeah.
Kind of
Well,
what
I
I'm
mean, yeah. If we try and apply logic to any of these positions, they're not exactly going to fare very well because logic isn't what they're built on. They're built on emotion and hysteria, essentially.
I mean, they're also built on emotion in quite a contradictory way in that they're built on emotion while claiming it to be logic, which is really just emotion without self-awareness.
Oh yeah, all that crowd who run their little scams with facts don't care about your feelings and destroyed with logic. You take even a slightly dispassionate look at them and go, "Oh my god, none of your argument is logic. It's a weird mix of emotion, superstition, and I don't know, magical thinking." It's they just because and probably the worst of all of those is Ben Shapiro because he continually asserts that he's reasonable and logical and factual, and he's consistently unreasonable, emotional, and inconsistent, and he's just uh, you know any one of his arguments can be, in his own words, destroyed in approximately 30 seconds because there's no grounding to them whatsoever.
Well, also, he's not really destroying what he's arguing against either. What he's doing is, it's essentially, he has a lot more experience with media than a lot of the people that he responds to, and therefore he kind of just crushes them with that experience and his knowledge of how to stir up the media, basically.
Yeah, it's basically he tries to, well, I mean, his version of debate is not, present points and argue them on their merits. It's make the other person look bad. And he believes he's won with facts if the other person in his mind looks bad. I mean, I remember there was one TV thing with a panel, and on the panel was a trans woman, and Shapiro kept referring to her as Sir.
As
And at one point, she leans across and says something like, "Sonny, say that once more, and you're going home in an ambulance." And he holds that up as, "Oh, see, they're emotional. I was being reasonable." I was going, no, he was actually saying the
that's
most cruel,
probably
vicious thing he could.
what's funny is that's probably way more patient than I would have been. Is I mean, I also wouldn't have agreed to go onto national television in a panel where Ben Shapiro is going to be there. But, I probably would have skipped the whole you're going home in an ambulance if you say that one more time and just sent him home in an ambulance.
I don't know if I'm still there. Australia's internet sucks.
So it's not just my end. I thought that something froze. Couldn't tell whether it was my end or
Yeah,
your
no.
end. Got
Okay, if
shitty
I was going to
technology stuff.
gamble, yeah, I'd say any technology problems are at my end, and hopefully they come good after a couple seconds if I drop out.
Yeah,
But
I've
I agree
heard
with what
some.
you were saying. I wouldn't be polite to Shapiro. I'd tell him to go fuck himself.
Uh, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'd skip the whole part where I tell him that if he doesn't stop, he's going home in an ambulance, and I probably would have just sent him home in an ambulance.
Yeah. It's just that inherent lie that he says that he's reasonable when he says nasty, mean, cruel, manipulative, and hateful things. And if someone reacts in a hostile way, he says, "See, I'm calm and logical and reasonable. They're awful." And he's not calm, logical, or reasonable. He's spiteful and mean and cruel and shallow. And if someone's just finally had enough of his shit, he goes, "Oh, see, I won." And it's just like, what a dickhead.
Oh, and on top of that, the part of the reason so many people buy that he is logical and reasonable is that he has a calm seeming demeanor.
Mm.
In that everything he's saying is inherently hostile, but he has a tone of voice that makes it sound like a civil disagreement. But civility isn't just about tone.
No, it's what you say. You're absolutely right. Did you see him on that BBC show? That is this crusty old BBC guy who's a real old school Tory conservative. But unlike presenters on American TV, a BBC political interviewer is likely to ask real and difficult questions to people no
I
matter
did
where they
see
are
that,
on the
and then
political spectrum.
Ben Shapiro got really razzed and eventually walked away, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Like the guy literally just said, I'm trying to apply logic to what you're doing here. It's like you're going on about we've lost civil discourse, but I just look at your history and there's nothing civil about the stuff you do. Why are you saying that the loss of civil discourse is someone else's fault? And Shapiro just starts his ranty way of going, "Oh, just admit you're on the left." And this guy, who's such a crusty old Tory, had a little giggle and just said, "Oh, if only you knew how wrong you are." Um, but I mean, he does the same thing. He is very much um, old school conservative, and the same guy. I saw him with Boris Johnson recently, the guy who is probably going to be British Prime Minister, and
Oh, that's a
and this
scary thought.
oh, terrifying thought. But this interviewer, he supports the Tories. Everyone knows he's a Tory. But he just says to Johnson, like, well, here's an example of you talking crap. What's that about? And Johnson is doing a typical politician thing and not answering the question and blustering. And the guy just won't stop. He just keeps bringing it back. No, my actual question was this. You were in this situation and you did this. What's that about? And Johnson says something irrelevant. He goes, no. I asked you what did you... And Johnson's getting, I think I'll call him Bonson. We love to give people nicknames. That was a slip, but Bonson, Boris Johnson can be
I
Bonson from now
remember
on.
Bojo being his nickname back during what was it, Brexit, or the Brexit
Oh,
campaign.
okay. I didn't hear that one. I like that Bojo the Clown, maybe. Yeah, he's such a weirdie. But yes, and he's probably going to be head of one of the most powerful governments in the world. And we're just getting a cavalcade of really fucking dodgy people running really important governments, which is, what amazing times we live in.
Oh, I can't wait for that. Can't wait for the new Axis powers.
Oh,
That's going to be a fun war.
it's just so hard to work out what's actually going on. I was like, when you watch America trying to provoke shit with Iran, and it's just like, what, are you really going to do this? Like, anyone even mildly rational
I
knows
mean,
this
in
is an
America's
absolute...
case, are they going to do it again as they've done it, as America just overthrew their government twice back in the 50s and or no, America didn't overthrow their government the second time, but their government that they had put in place was overthrown, and that's why they have the current government they do now. The situation
Yeah,
there is
well,
completely America's fault, but
yeah,
they try
America,
and start.
the
They
Shani.
try and yeah, it's just they start. Yeah, America's always starting shit, and then shit that they cause, they then put blame onto the victims of what they've caused.
Yeah, and it's just seeing this like horror show unfold in slow motion. It's like any rational person is looking at it going like, what the fuck are you doing? How could you possibly think provoking conflict with Iran is a good idea? It will be a fucking nightmare. It will be, I mean, like Iraq was a shit show. Um, but the blowback from inciting conflict with Iran would be so much worse. It's just ridiculous to contemplate it.
I mean, these wars also have just factually never solved anything. Going to war with a country because of their internal human rights violations doesn't generally tend to help with those rights violations. The
Oh yeah, absolutely.
best way to deal with it would to be to provide resources for people trying to escape that situation. If you actually care about the human cost and not waving your political dick everywhere.
Yeah, and I mean the long history of disastrous interventions. There's the decades of interference in South America, like anyone who democratically elected, a left-leaning or socialist or communist government, the CIA would be there to undermine it. And it's like, the boogeyman used to be the communists, and the American interests would flagrantly impose a brutal dictator to replace a democratically elected socialist government. And now it's like, well, this country, is majority Muslim and is not acting in America's interest. So we prefer to have a dictator in place. And it's just like, you've got to, at some point, I feel like someone's got to learn the lesson of, you can't make all your decisions on ideology. Like, even if the person running the country is deeply evil. It's just like, will intervention actually make things better? Not in this fantasy land of they'll greet us like liberators, but literally going, what will be lost, what will be gained? No one does that. There's just this, we'll sweep in, change everything, and everything will be perfect. And there's no logic to it at all. And it just keeps happening again and again and again.
It, yeah, it just absolutely boggles my mind. On top of that, you mentioned they will greet us like liberators, which makes me really want to laugh at Americans, especially since not only were we not greeted like liberators, but they did try to spin it like we were. Because in Iraq, when they were greeted, I'm assuming you know the thumbs up symbol, right?
Yeah.
Everyone knows. Everyone in America knows a thumbs up means good job, or it's positive. In
Yes.
Iraq, it's like giving somebody the bird.
Yes. Some hand gestures don't translate well into other cultures.
Yeah. And what's funny too is, so I mean, it's a little bit or it's a bit like it's tangentially related, but the funny thing is how the thumbs up and middle finger both came about is that the middle finger is, at least when people use the middle finger, its origins was to represent the length of someone's penis, and people who do the thumbs up version, thumb is supposed to represent a more girthy penis.
Aha. That's yeah, okay. That's some good background.
Yeah, that's where the fuck you meaning of both of those come from. Of course,
I did
giving
actually.
a thumbs up usually does not mean that.
Mm.
Although I've been known to give somebody a thumbs up if they flip me the bird just because I don't know what to do with my hands ever.
Well, that probably throws them as well if someone, yeah, gives you the finger and you just go, yeah, that probably confuses them, which is good.
I mean, I'm not even doing it for the fuck you thing. I'm just like, whatever. I'm not really paying attention to you. Could give less of a shit about the fake about the bird you're giving me. Have one of your
Yeah,
own. Yeah, it's just it is absolutely mind-boggling. Like the lengths of America, the lengths of ignorance that America goes to. Just
yeah.
to but some of it has to be fucking intentional. At some point, it has to be intentional and not just like a lack of knowledge.
Mm. Well, you see, particularly, and this does my head in, and it's a problem around the world. But I'll be honest and say it seems considerably worse in America. The right wing pundits, whether they're actually in politics or they're in the media or on the internet or whatever, they just routinely say shit that is blatantly untrue. And I agree with you. There are obvious cases they know they're lying, but they also know they will never be held accountable for their lies. No one will ever, you know, make them answer for their lies. Um, and it won't stop people listening to them. It's like you can point out however many times you like that this politician or this media talking head is just blatantly lying, and it won't change anything. They'll still have their platform and they'll still keep lying. Uh, and so people, it's one of the oldest tricks in propaganda, the big lie. You repeat it often enough, and people start to assume it's true because they've heard it so many times. And why would I keep hearing this if it isn't true? Humans are just absurdly easy to confuse, essentially.
I mean, that's how any magician or illusionist could tell you exactly what you told me about humans being easy to fool.
Oh yeah, illusionists do the misdirection thing. That's the and they're doing it for entertainment purposes. But it's like they trick you into focusing on one thing, so you don't see the thing they're actually doing. That's a really good analogy. That is exactly what these political types are doing, getting people to
Except
focus on shit.
there's much more nefarious purpose behind it, which is why a magic show is entertaining, and politics can be entertaining to some, but has a very serious effect.
Ugh, yeah, no, politics is a fucking horror show as far as I'm concerned. It's the constant struggle when you see these people just getting away with this shit and going, well, what can actually be done about it? It's and I think that's part of their game as well, to just deaden your soul so you can't fight back because it's just, non-stop awful shit.
Oh, definitely, it's constant disinformation and ranting and raving. Who should? It's often a list of people we should hate, people we should like, and you're never given any reason other than that you should.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that any sort of reasonableness is it's just not real. And yeah, okay. Here's the thing I've brought up in other forums before, but okay, like Russian interference in the U.S. election. To me, the most interesting thing about all the trolls on the internet is when the different troll networks and particularly like Facebook troll pages and whatnot were exposed. There were some that were both extremely partisan Democrat and some were extremely partisan Republican. The tactic was just to turn people against one another to stop any sort of sensible discourse from happening, to just whip up extreme emotions. And they were targeting both sides. I mean, uh, the stuff that
I
was pro.
realize that Democrats are basically on the same side as Republicans, but not as far to the right. But
Well, there
it
is
was
that
definitely
as
part of
well.
it. But it was definitely like both sides of like that Republican Democrat dichotomy.
Mm,
In that they might be on the same side politically speaking, if you're talking about the left and right, but
mm.
that they themselves are at each other's throats because they're opposing political parties.
Yeah, it's. I mean, to an enormous extent, it's just a game of musical chairs when almost nothing changes. And this is the thing, like, Trump just made shit weird by being a horrible, horrible person and not hiding it. I keep thinking people are forgetting how colossally fucked George W. Bush was. Like starting a war on false pretenses that killed over 1 million people, um, burning away trillions of dollars. Dick Cheney getting his pals at Halliburton no bid contracts worth billions of dollars. Like Cheney was literally looting the American treasury and was never held accountable.
I mean, not to mention the fact that the company he was a CEO of before becoming vice president
Yeah,
demonstrably
Halliburton.
profited off of the Iraq War.
Yeah, no. In his powers, because Bush wasn't making any decisions, he was a monkey. Cheney was running the show, and he awarded billions of dollars to his old company. And my God, some of the horror stories. And this is the thing, I can't believe these aren't general knowledge, in that they shipped billions of dollars in cash to Iraq. And it was the idea of bribing Iraqi officials and being able to set up the new Iraqi regime. And the money just went missing. And stuff like that, just blatantly stealing money. But also, like, Halliburton built all the camps that the soldiers stayed in, and some of the construction was so shoddy that soldiers got electrocuted, as in to death, taking a shower because there was exposed wiring, and when the water hit it, the soldiers were electrocuted. How were people not put on trial for that?
Oh my god, billions of dollars and they can't even build a proper fucking encampment.
Well, because they were just fucking stealing it.
I mean, pretty much, you know. Wow. I actually did not know that it was that shoddy, but I'd heard some of the stories of the billions of dollars going missing.
Oh yeah,
How are
no.
you? How are you going to steal billions of dollars though, and at the very least, not cover your ass by building encampments that do not have exposed wiring that electrocute your soldiers?
But you think
Like
about it, and
that's like a bad move for them.
oh yeah, but
I mean,
and
I
how are
find it
they?
hilarious, but
Yeah, how are they not held accountable? Like you get this ridiculous, worship the troops thing that happens in America, and it's like you've always got to, the troops are always right. You've got to thank the troops. You've got to thank them for their service. Bless the troops. All this shit. And when these criminal fucking gangsters actually kill troops through mismanagement and theft, they're not held accountable. How the ever loving fuck does that work?
I mean, it's all hypocrisy. It's
Yeah,
not about actually being consistent. I mean, on top of that, when those soldiers do come home and they've got PTSD because yeah, you send somebody over to commit war crimes, especially if they weren't going in quite with the mindset that someone like myself would have about the U.S. military. Yeah,
yeah,
they're probably going to go in and see some horrific shit, and then when they come back, they've got PTSD and they can't find a job and they're homeless because all that uh, all that support the truth shit seems to end as soon as they come home.
oh, absolutely. Same as protect the unborn babies by banning abortion, but provide zero care whatsoever to babies that are actually born. It's like I'm sure they're aware of their hypocrisy, and they just don't care. It's absolutely surreal.
It really is. I mean, it's like you know. There's a joke that I've seen on the internet on whether or not George Carlin is timeless or we're just dealing with the same bullshit 20 years later. But there was this old joke that he made about pro-lifers where he was like, with these conservatives, pre-board you're fine, but preschool you're fucked. You're on your own, you fucking mooch. Get a
Yeah,
job. It's like,
or the same stuff but worse. I think. I mean, like I remember in the '90s, I used to listen to this sort of industrial music act called Consolidated, and they were very sort of very left wing punk in their attitudes. And they used to include a lot of they had like an open mic at a lot of their shows, and they'd record. People were able to just come up and say things and make comments, and they'd put it on some of their albums. But the stuff they were protesting against, they were like Gulf War One, like how terrible that was. I was going, God, you guys had no idea what was coming. Gulf War Two was so much worse. And then on the financial front, they're talking about exposing the savings and loans scandal, which was big, but it was minuscule compared to the global financial crisis that happened later. You're like, you poor guys, you were railing against this, thinking this was the worst thing that was ever going to happen. And 10 years later, it was the same shit, but so much worse.
it seems to me that some of these small things are kind of test runs. You know, you deport a few, like in America, you deport a few quote unquote illegal immigrants. You deport a few undocumented immigrants, and it goes over. it goes over mostly without a hitch in America, and especially when done under a Democrat like Obama.
Mm.
And I mean, it feel a lot like that was kind of the testing grounds for just how ICE can be used. Because ICE
Oh
didn't
yeah,
exist before Bush.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, there were a lot of deportations going on under Obama that were largely kept under wraps, and it's what can we get away with?
Oh,
And while
absolutely.
and with the ICE camp or with the detention centers, which are basically concentration camps, if you've seen the pictures on like the inside of just like how bad it is, not to
Yes,
mention the fact that they're literally locking up the children of these families in cages as well.
yes,
But yeah, so they're locking everybody in cages. They're telling them to drink out of toilets. And so many Americans or American citizens are unaware of just how brutal it is, despite the fact that it's really not all that hard to find the pictures of just how bad it is.
yes. And I mean, as a point I've made, and I mean, I've repeated it, I guess, is the right thing to say, because I saw other people make it and I thought, no, you're absolutely right. You look at a lot of this shit that's happening, and uh, the cruelty is the point. People are going, oh, how can they be so cruel? And I'm going like, no, the cruelty is the point. That's a selling point for these people. Like the uh, horrific nature of those camps, that's deliberate. They're deliberately doing terrible things because it appeals to these people. And it's, yeah, you've got to understand when you see this horrible shit happening, the cruelty of it is not incidental. It's um, the
100%
the
point.
central point,
I mean, kind of
and that's creepy.
the whole point in the deportations in the first place was basically we don't really give a fuck about like what your situation was before. We're just going to send you right back to where you were. And a lot of these places where it's not incidental that a lot of quote unquote illegal immigration rhetoric that the right wing has is very much centered on people of Central and South America, as well as the people of Mexico, which I think is technically still considered a North American country.
I think so. Yeah.
So in a lot of these places in South and Central America had their economies or had their economies and their destroyed, as well as their criminal underworld bolstered by the American war on drugs, which in itself was an intentional political move by Nixon to basically persecute leftists and black people because they were people who were not going to vote for him.
Yeah, and I mean, and
And the
the other
idea
thing, yeah, sorry.
and I mean the idea is if they're in jail they can't vote for it, so you associate pot with the hippies and heroin with the blacks, and that was kind of the scam that that administration ran. I think the war on drugs may have predated that, but at the very least, uh, there was a big like uptick in that, and even one of Nixon's aides admitted, like just flat out said that that was the case. Said we knew we were lying about the drugs.
Mm. Oh yeah, I think most people accept that that was a premeditated campaign to attack and marginalize people that Nixon saw as his enemies. And yeah, the whole rhetoric about drugs was complete bullshit.
Yeah, and then the war on drugs is still perpetuated to this day, despite the fact that it's quite literally been proven to be basically a sham. that it's not really stopping any drugs. I mean, drugs are more available now than they were before the war on drugs.
Mm. Yes,
And
there is not much doubt that in the war of drugs, drugs came out on top.
yeah, but the war on drugs wasn't really meant to be won. It was more meant to be sustained, as way too many American corporations have made money off of the fact that these drugs are illegal. Because these
Oh,
drugs can't make competing businesses quite as well
mm,
if they're illegal.
yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I just had the thought. Yes, America's war on drugs was like Australia's war on emus. The emus won, and in America the drugs won. But you're right. It wasn't literally to stop drugs. Like the war on terror wasn't literally to stop terrorism, because if you literally wanted to stop terrorism, you'd look at root causes and deal with that. The war on terror was an excuse to put an authoritarian infrastructure in place. Uh, it's never intended to end. It's never intended to, oh, we beat it. It's it's to advance an agenda.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much because if it was just a war for like revenge, or if it was a war for revenge on 9/11, didn't we kind of already get that when SEAL Team 6 went in and shot Osama bin Laden?
Or, I mean, how
You know,
many?
the person who we were supposedly supposed to be looking for when we started going into the wars in the Middle East in the first place, or well, not the first ones, I get, but after 9/11, going into like
Oops, I think I dropped out again. Hopefully, I'll come back in a minute. Let's see what happens. No, still not happening. Okay. Uh, what's it look like there? I'm not sure if this is going to come back. I think it might have died. Do, 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 do. Well, you can hear me, Fox. Can you hear me? I'm just randomly saying. Ah. Oh my god! Was I on there the whole time? That's weird. Ah, it's at the other end. All right. Now it's just me. Look what I discovered I could do. I'm gonna do this again. Okay, I'll wait a minute and see if we can get back. Otherwise, that might be it for the day. Not sure how big the lag is as well. I was sort of watching this back on the YouTube channel, and there seems to be a lag of about, got almost a minute between when I say something and when it comes up on the YouTube channel. I guess I'm the only one on the call now. I own the channel. It's my channel now. I'm in control. Ah, I'm not sure if this is going to happen. Well, it's coming up on lunchtime. There's probably people in this house expecting me to organize lunch for them as well. So I might come back uh, and hang out here another time. Let me see. No, no, as oh geez, this might be over. Just ordered some red rooster. Nice fox. Even then, I'd still have to go in order to order anything. Um, I'm going to put my shiny crystal ball on here again. This is a new special effect. This is like a test pattern. I'm just going to do that. I like that the camera focuses on it when I put it right up against there, actually. Ah, American Anarchist. Internet working. Just need to get back in. So it looks okay. It looks like we could be all go. Actually, is this thing working? We'll see what's happening. Oh,
Oh, well, my face is showing.
you're back.
Ah.
It looks like we could be all go.
Oh, shit. I've got a shit-eating grin as well.
See what's happening.
If you can't tell, I'm working with a touch screen as well, so this is fun. Oh, I've got this playing as well.
Yes, I can hear me delayed.
Yeah, that was my phone. I had that on to kind of keep track of what was going on in conversation while trying to fix my internet, because my phone can work on data.
Yeah, okay.
I've got a shit-eating grin as well. But yeah, yeah, that was definitely my end, and it seemed to shut off in the whole house, not just for my device.
Okay. Well, we're back.
But yeah, if you heard you say something about people waiting for you to possibly waiting for you to organize. If you do need to step away, we can wrap
no, I
this
can
up
hang
when you
around for
need
about
to.
15, 20 minutes. I can hang around for about 15, 20 minutes. It's all good. I was just going to say, well, if it's not coming back, then maybe.
Angry Aussie taking over my channel. Yeah, I saw that and thought it was pretty funny. I was wondering why I couldn't hear you on my end, but it looked like the stream was still going. I'm like, that's weird. I thought that it was on the other end as well.
I was just really weirdly rambling because I thought no one could hear me, and then Fox of Fate commented, "We can hear you," and it's like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, and then that actually got typed in the chat as I see a thing that's like, oh, you've been disconnected from the chat room because you or no, you've been disconnected from the chat room because you have no internet connection. And I'm like, oh, what the fuck? Usually, it's supposed to be the Australian internet that sucks.
It really is. Well, our speeds are shit. Maybe it's your actual connection that's not 100%. But yeah, we can have a stable connection.
I think my brother restarted.
Speed.
Yeah, I think my brother actually restarted the router. If I'm completely honest.
Oh, okay.
Which.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually went downstairs myself to go and restart the router, but I'm looking at it and I see the internet come back on my brother's PS4, and I'm like, either it disconnected already or my brother just reset the router to fix it. But yeah, it was just a really funny moment because I thought everybody could hear me, but nobody could hear you, and it turned out it was the other way around.
Yeah, no, I was assuming no one could hear me. I thought, I can't hear you. I think it's probably gone at my end. And I'm just rambling and going on. And then I find out, oh, no, we can hear you. And it's like, well, oh, that could have been very embarrassing.
Yeah, it was like the first thing I did was I picked up my phone and I'm like, "Yep, seems like my internet shut down. I'm working to fix the problem." Because
Oh, we're all.
that would have been that was definitely a funny moment that has actually never happened to me before. I've had instances where I've disconnected for like a second or two because of like Wi-Fi ranges or whatever,
Mm.
but yeah, it just disconnected. Yeah, I mean Comcast does absolutely suck. We've got a privatized internet system over here. I don't know how much or how the system over there works. Not to sound racist, but I don't know how the Australian system works at all. Or well, I know how some of the political system works, but their like internet and how that's delegated. I know it's basically delegated to the private companies here, where Comcast has been gobbling up every fucking company. It seems like.
Yeah, the individual internet companies all operate privately. The infrastructure was built by the government-run telecommunications utility, which has been progressively privatized over the years. Um, but yeah, basically, our internet seems to be going backwards, which sucks immensely.
I mean, American internet isn't much better on the going backwards part, and that it seems like we're going backwards right into a fucking monopoly. It, it it's so fucking expensive for internet over here. It's like, I mean, we have three of us in the house that I'm in now, so that would be so between the three of us, we tend to pay around like $30 for internet for a single month.
Yeah, I think you'd probably find Australia's internet more expensive and much slower.
Ah, that's a rare thing for Australia, especially since they're America. Although I think in America everything else will kill you expense wise.
Mm.
You know, you can afford really cheap food, but you can't afford like the stuff you need to be healthy, like a fucking doctor, for example.
Yes, yeah, that's one thing Americans notice here, that food is basically more expensive, but A, it's better quality generally, and B, it's because most people get paid a decent wage, and that makes things more expensive. So it's a bit more human. But yes, our access to healthcare uh, for everyone apart from the filthy rich seems to be much better than in the US. Like, if people need to go to a doctor here, they go to a doctor. I mean, I keep hearing the stories about people who end up with chronic illness because when it first sets in, they can't afford to go to the doctor. And of course, it doesn't get better. And you end up with a much more serious condition. Whereas, here, it's not free, but people will go to the doctor if they need to go to the doctor, because you're not going to get crippled economically by medical costs.
Oh yeah, as well as I mean the medical costs as well are like variable from hospital to hospital because of the charge master, which is basically a book of like, or which is basically just every hospital has their own version of it, and it's a list of artificially inflated prices, which in itself was made as like a response to insurance companies. In that they would inflate these prices, and then the insurance companies would negotiate lower prices from that and then tell everybody that they got a discount because of the insurance, when before, even without like the insurance, you paid a little bit for like because it costs stuff and doctors have to get paid. But when insurance companies kind of came in, what's the point of having insurance if you can't get a discount? So
Yeah, I mean, basically the combination of the insurance companies being scammers and the pharmaceutical companies being scammers in the US seems like to most of the rest of the world who don't face anything near as bad as what happens in US, that seems like an absolute nightmare. I mean, there are always going to be shortcomings in any system, but like the number of people who go bankrupt every year in the US solely because of medical costs is absolutely horrific.
I can't even. So like I'm actually one of those people that can't afford to see a doctor, but very much should be or should have seen one in quite a few cases. I can't,
Mm,
or I definitely should be, or should see a dentist because I can feel 4 fucking cavities in my mouth,
mm.
which means I know that a dentist will find at least that many if they check my mouth, but I can't afford to fucking see one with no insurance.
Mm.
Or,
Dentists are
well,
still expensive here. Dentists are not really covered by the socialized medicine unless you are, on some form of benefit payment and are willing to wait a long time. Like how Azy got his false teeth, and I mean, he was at the chronic end of the spectrum with teeth problems because he had this semi-cancerous infection in his jaw that was killing all his teeth, and his teeth were just like rotting away and falling out. They were unsalvageable because of this problem, and he had to have this major procedure, and is worried it was going to take years to get this work done and get false teeth. But then I think it ended up because he was happy to let students do the work. They put him in sooner, and yes, his false teeth were fitted um, in a couple of months instead of a couple of years because we were really worried about it. But he was at an extreme end of the sort of dental needs spectrum, so he got and he didn't have to pay for that.
oh, I imagine that would have been. I imagine that would have been stretched across decades in an American medical, or across like a decade at least in the American medical system.
Mm. Yeah, so yeah, he ended up having things work out reasonably well, but yeah, for people like working a normal job, a dentist can be very expensive still, um, and that probably should be more subsidised by the government because, as we've learned in Australia, on purely economic terms, if people are more able to get medical help when they need it, they're healthier, and so they don't miss work, and so the economy is stronger. So, you know, the money spent, and it's taxpayer money spent on health, is returned to the economy multiple times by people actually being healthier. So it's not really welfare for people. It's welfare for companies. It boosts the productivity of private enterprise because their workforce is healthier. Um, and so
I mean,
yes,
even
this
on
myth.
top of that, even on top of that, the fact that you have to ever really argue that point kind of shows how little a lot of people care about people. Because that shouldn't
I,
even need to be a point when bringing up like healthcare. Healthcare should be something that like any like so any healthy society should think, yeah, we need healthcare for everybody.
mm,
We need to be able to keep people healthy and have at least some system to provide as much of it as we possibly can. Shouldn't be made. I mean, it's understandable that in certain situations where they could potentially get swamped, that they might not be able to do as much, but to basically make it as restrictive as it is in the U.S. is it's outrageous.
Yeah, I think this is something. I was just looking it up while we were talking because I knew there'd been a piece published, and it was just earlier this year. Oh no, it wasn't. I looked at the date wrong. It was actually published 2 years ago, on the Huffington Post, which is not something I would usually recommend, quite honestly. But just the headline of this piece sums it all up. And it's, I don't know how to explain that you should care about other people. It's, and certain people, and like you've just said it, and I agree, at a certain point, you feel like, why the fuck are we having this argument? Why is it an argument to treat people with basic decency? Why is it an argument to help people who need help? What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, I've had some conversations with people where I work. You would think that working the same shitty job that I do at a warehouse, making absolute shit for pay, that they'd be all for caring for other people. But some of them, very specifically with the, I'm not sure if you heard about the Amazon strike with their warehouse
Yes, I heard
that
about
was
that. Yes.
on Prime Day.
Mm.
So one of my coworkers just admitted to the fact that he had bought something on Prime Day. He hadn't known about the strike, so it was understandable. But even after being made aware of the strike, basically was like, oh, well, and eventually got to a point where he's like, well, I don't really care about anyone but myself. And it's like, and then I'm like, yep, you're pretty flagrant about that. I, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
So I just kind of called him a scab for. Actually, I haven't stopped. Every time I see him, I just like refer to him as a scab passive aggressively because I don't want to get fired. You would think a communist would want to get fired, but
Yeah.
I also live in a pretty shitty place and don't want to live in a shittier place known as the streets. So
Yeah. Yeah, you got to live. That's the thing. It's like, oh, you say there's something wrong with the system, but you're in the system and going, I don't have a choice.
the idea that there was ever a choice to begin with, I didn't have a choice to be a part of capitalism. I was forced against my will like everybody else.
Mm. It's like that, why people don't realize, how unfair the system is. There's a quote that's attributed to the writer John Steinbeck that says the reason socialism never took off in America is because Americans don't regard themselves as an exploited proletariat. They regard themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires.
They really do, and I just do not get that mindset. I'm like, it's like you think you're a temporary. Well, I don't think I've ever actually used that phrase in conversation. I'm not that much of a nerd, although I am aware of that quote. But I've gone like, you think of yourself as like someone who's going to be rich someday, but like you're in your 30s or you're in your 30s or your 40s working some fucking nothing warehouse job where the bosses treat you like shit because they think that since they hire felons that they can basically treat them however they fucking want. You're not a temporarily embarrassed millionaire. You're exploited.
Yeah, it's whenever you bring up like, oh, there should be this tax on, the top 1% of the top 1%, after $10 million, you should pay a fairly significant chunk of tax on anything over that. People go, oh no, because they've got this goal that one day I'll earn that. And go, no, you won't. You just won't. Uh,
If I ever,
Why are you?
if I were to ever earn $10 million, oh, I wouldn't even need $10 million. If I earned $1 million. Oh my God, the things that I could, I don't even know how the hell I'd spend it all.
Mm.
Like
And that's the thing. The
the
people
idea
with
that,
all these assets don't spend it.
yeah, the idea that someone like already 10 million is way more than someone would really ever need. I mean, unless they were going to keep that 10 million for the rest of their lifetime, it's more than they'd ever need. I mean, even then,
Yeah.
you could probably live
Mm.
your whole life off, or
Yeah. You
I
just get
guess
all
you
these
could live,
people. Yeah,
but
you get the people saying, "I don't want to." Oh no, I don't want an inheritance tax on amounts more than $10 million because what about my kids? Go, your kids aren't getting shit, okay? Because you're never going to have that much. Why the hell are you acting like billionaires need your help? Because they don't, and you're never going to be one of them. Uh, it's like, you get all these, because I work in tech, and you get all this bullshit self-starter mentality. All these people where you go, oh, look at them, self-made, blah, blah. They all came from positions of privilege. And it's like, how to make it big in the world. And you get these bullshit articles saying, work hard, be innovative. No, no. How to make it big in the world is step one, be born already rich. If you're not born rich,
and then
you're
step
up
two is
against it.
continue to, yeah, and then step two is to continue to fuck everybody over.
Hmm. Oh, step two is are you a straight white cis male? Because you need that 90+% of the time. If you're not rich and not a straight white cis male, holy shit, are you up against it? It's absolutely, you do get individuals who don't fit that who make it big, but for over 90% of the time, the people who make it big fall into the either born rich or straight white cis male. If you're not those things,
What about the
it's
small one
so
with a
against you.
million dollars?
Oh my God, have you seen those articles? They shit me so much. Like, oh, millennials, you think you can't own a house? Look at this person who owned 3 properties by 25. And the story is inevitably their rich fucking parents loaned them money and let them live rent free. And it's like, fuck off.
Oh, and then when you get into, if you're like a millennial and you get into an argument with your grandparents about it, they're like, "Oh, I was able to do this, this, and this off of whatever money." Always forgetting to adjust for inflation, and it's like, yeah, I'd like to make $30 an hour, which is what that translates to today, but I make
Yeah.
less than half of that.
And that's the big thing. Literally, like a tradesperson, a plumber, just anyone with a basic qualification, a plumber, a teacher, whatever, could buy their own fucking home 50 years ago. Easy. Not with both parents working, with one parent working, they had enough income to own their own home. And that's just not possible today. Anyone who says it's possible is talking crap.
But it is possible if one of the parents is a rich asshole,
Yeah,
which means
exactly.
probably the other ones, which probably means the other parents are rich cunt as well. But you know,
Yeah. No, the people who fool themselves that the system's not completely geared against you unless you're already at the top of it, it's just absolutely uh, ridiculous. The degree to which people swallow the propaganda does my head in.
yep, that whole phrase about not drinking the Kool-Aid, and Americans are like, we've been told sugar is bad for long enough, and start drinking it, and it's like, you just drank poison with cyanide.
Yeah.
You did yourself in. You fucking played yourself.
So it just reminds me of the number of times I've seen people use jokes like someone, and it's usually some blowhard, whether they're a politician or in the media or one of the internet right wing blowhards, who'll do something super stupid and they say they're doing it. Because it upsets the libs. And it's going, yeah, fucking up your life to own the libs. That's a winning move. You're a champ.
Oh, like there was Paul Joseph Watson making a joke about it, or not making a joke, but making like, oh, smoking a cigarette, and I can't remember if it was like, oh, to trigger the libs or because it looks cool. It's like, yeah, keep quote unquote triggering the libs,
Yeah, no, he's straight on.
You should smoke more cigarettes.
Mm. He straight up said he was, because he was smoking in like his avatar, and he's saying, "I'm smoking to trigger the libs because they hate smoking." And I was going, "No, no, dude, I'm completely okay with smoking, but you'd really trigger me if you like injected methamphetamine straight into your dick. I would be so triggered. You'd totally own me if you did that every day."
Oh, I mean, he'd certainly. I don't know. I think I'd probably tune in at that point just to see the disaster that would unfold.
It would be pretty funny, quite honestly. That would suddenly make his videos worth watching if he was mainlining crystal meth every day. I'd actually watch him at that point.
Yeah, I probably would too. I mean, that's the kind of entertainment I'm used to growing up with. I, I grew up in I grew up in an area as well as a family full of drug addicts. Oh,
Yeah.
I myself have a nicotine addiction that I've been trying to kick.
Mm.
It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm so triggered by the fact that you're smoking a cigarette, even though I myself have been trying to kick that habit. I mean, it's like, if anything, seeing you smoke makes me want to smoke less.
Yeah, good call. Well, it's just coming up on noon on Sunday here in Australia. I think I'm going to have to go and organise lunch.
All right, organized lunch, you collectivist.
I am, yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I'm the slave. Why my offspring are adults? Why are they still making me provide their lunch? But that's the way it goes. Um, so yeah, it was cool hanging out. Um, take care, anyone and everyone who's watching.
Definitely, and it was pretty fun to have you on the show. I'd love to talk to you sometime in the future.
Yeah, we should definitely do it
It was
again. I
pretty
love having
fun.
the chats. Yeah, definitely. We'll do it again. So look out for that, everyone.
All right, and thank you for everybody who showed up. See you all whenever I get around to streaming again. And
Good plan.
if you, for those of you who didn't come from Angry Aussie's channel, which I'm not sure, yeah, Angry Aussie is their name. I'll put a link to it in the chat, and I'll. Oh, I'm repeating myself now. Anything you'd like to say before we go, or did you already say your
No, I
piece?
think because yeah, I think we said a few pieces. I really enjoyed that, and we'll definitely do it again sometime.
All right. Thank you for coming on the channel.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.